Hey guys, in today's video, I'm going to tell you all how you can start getting more kills in Season 9. If you find this video helpful or informative, please do remember to give it a like rating and subscribe if you would like to see more. Also, I live stream Fortnite every single day on Twitch, and that will be linked down in the description below. In this video, I'm going to explain some things about rotations and how I like to rotate in the game to be able to find more players. Because at its core, if you want to get a lot of kills in a game, you're going to have to find a lot of players. In this video, I'm going to be using one of my favorite spots to drop as an example so that you guys can hopefully get a better idea of how I think about the game and apply this to whatever spots that you like to go to or however you like to play the game. Starting off, Dusty Divot is one of my favorite locations to drop at. This might come as a shock. A lot of people think of this as like a low-key location, but what makes it really good is that it's really centered, so it's going to be pretty consistent in the amount of people that you find at this location and the amount of people that you find around this location. So I like to drop at Dusty, and then after I clear Dusty, I like to go to Salty. And the reason why I like to go to Salty is because it's a pretty populated location on its own, but it's also a location that a lot of people drop at, or a lot of people rotate to themselves. Places like Fatal, places like Paradise, Shifty sometimes, and all the spot like around that area, that bottom area of the map. Pretty much all of those places rotate, or the players from those places rotate to Salty. And since I play a lot of solo, some of the more low-key spots or just spots that you would think don't make sense as a spot to drop at, people drop at those locations in solos and they often rotate towards Salty. So that's why I like to go from Dusty to Salty, so we could drop Dusty and get a few kills. And then one thing I like to do is I like to get 400 wood or around 400 wood on my way to Salty. One thing I see a lot of players mess up when it comes to rotating and getting more kills in a match is that they spend way too much time harvesting and getting like an absurd amount of materials off spawn. And it does make sense to get a lot of material. It's going to help you out. Having mats is very important in this game. But if you want to get a lot of kills, you're not going to be able to spend as much time harvesting as you would like. That's why I like to get around 400-ish, sometimes a little more, sometimes a little less. Also, if I'm low on shield, I pretty much only grab the mushrooms that are right in front of me. Another thing I've seen is people walk around certain areas gathering mushrooms or whatever, coconuts. They gather these things trying to get shield, and they just spend so much time doing it that a lot of the lobby dies out. You're going to need to be fast on these rotations, so just doing things like getting way too much material or worrying too much about health or worrying too much about loot can definitely screw you over. Obviously, get what you can, but you don't want to like spend several minutes looking for like a slightly better AR or something along those lines. You're going to be killing people, you're going to be getting mats from killing people, and you're going to be getting loot from killing people. So if you want a high kill game, try to spend less time harvesting and less time looting. What you do want to do is harvest on your way to an area, and that's what I'm going to get to. I like to get around 400 wood at Dusty and then fight the people at Salty, however many there is. And then after that fight at Salty, I want to loot those players. If we get a lot of mats, that's good. If we don't, I want to get around 600-ish wood from the fences at the Salty houses as I'm walking towards the skybase. The skybase that is in between Salty, Dusty, Loot Lake, all of that. Depending on where I think is going to be hot, I might either take this skybase to the Loot Lake area or the outskirts of Loot Lake, the diner maybe if I see some stuff going on there, or I might take this skybase to the Fatal skybase and then fly around there looking for people. It just depends if I think one of those areas is going to be hot. Like as I record this video, there's a challenge for kills in Fatal, so there might be more players in Fatal and there might be more players rotating to Fatal than there otherwise would be. But oftentimes those players are going to come Salty, so you won't need you can like catch them rotating as you're flying around this area. You'll catch them coming to you at Salty. Even if Salty isn't in the zone, I like to push Salty, and the reason for that is because with all this mobility in the game, you don't have to worry about the storm as much, and you can often catch players coming in really late into the zone and get a lot of easy kills for yourself on these players rotating. You won't always be able to loot them, but you can often get a lot of easy kills on players in the storm, and you don't need to necessarily be worried about it as much, because even if the zone goes really far away, there's slipstreams, there's skybases, there's so much mobility in the game right now that the storm really isn't that big of a concern for most of the game. Once you get to the late game, it's pretty different, but we'll get into that actually right now. The late game is another thing that has changed quite significantly in Fortnite as time goes on. It used to be that the moving circles, like 5th zone onward, would pretty much always just be like 1 or 2 players. But people have gotten better at playing late game as time goes on, and a lot of players just turtle and survive in the late game. Things like arena and competitive being like popular have really taught people how to play late game more effectively. So late game can actually be an area where you can pick up a significant amount of kills if you know how to play it. In solos especially, these late game situations just pretty much become stalemates. And what I like to do is kill people as they're rotating. If nothing is happening at all and you're the only player doing anything and you're trying to like wall replace on a turtling player or something, you're going to get third partied and you're going to get third party sniped. And even if that player isn't very good, if they hit you at all, they might deal 150 damage with the heavy sniper, or they might just outright kill you if they end up hitting a headshot. So in these stalemate situations when nothing is happening in the game at all, you don't really want to be forcing fights unless you have to. Obviously, if someone's shooting at you, you can defend yourself and do what you feel like is best in that situation. But a lot of times in late game, you want to wait until they're rotating and then catch them off rotating. These players aren't always that great. Like I said, people have gotten better at playing late game. But I think really what players have done is they've just gotten better at turtling and making it slightly longer in the late game. Once it comes to rotations, a lot of people still have no idea what they're doing. And if you chill out on the edge of the storm, or maybe even in the storm sometimes, you can get a lot of easy kills for yourself, and you won't even be taking that much storm damage a lot of times. They recently changed the storm to where you have to be standing in it for a full second in order to start taking that storm damage. So you can often like juggle yourself in and out of the storm, basically, like run forward a little bit, shoot, storm slides to touch you, shoot at people again. You know what I mean? You can do this without actually taking any storm damage, even though it seems like you're in the storm. You don't have to actually be worried about the storm as much. And this is if you're trying to get kills. Obviously, this isn't the most ideal or effective way to play late game. But if you wanted to clean up and get a lot of kills in the late game, let's say you have, I don't know, 10 people and moving towards that fifth zone, maybe not necessarily in the fifth zone itself, but moving towards it. If you can pick up like 4 or 5 easy kills shooting players in the back who aren't suspecting, like that's going to increase your average kill count over time. And this video isn't meant to show you how to get like 20 kill games consistently. Like for that, basically just hot drop and do what you think is best from that point on. But like if you want to like increase your average kill count and still get like a decent amount of kills every game, that's what I'm trying to do with this video. So like I said, that was an example of how I like to rotate. I like to go from Dusty, get the kills there, get around 400-ish material, clean up Salty, get to around 600-ish material or more, hopefully, if the player's there farmed, and then go around the sky bases. And then from once you get like that deep into the game, it's going to kind of depend on the zone and what you think is hot at a given point, just depending on the match. One thing you want to keep in mind with how people drop is challenges, the gold zone, and what is near the bus. If the bus, let's say, for example, the bus goes from Lucky Landing just straight up towards Lazy Lagoon, like just right up the center of the map, there could be people pretty much anywhere because everywhere was kind of similar, like fly distance to get to. But if the zone was like, let's say, Shifty to Pleasant or whatever, like just straight up that left side of the map, it's pretty unlikely that there's going to be people Paradise or like spots on the far right side of the map, just because people would have to glide so far to like get there. So keep that in mind. Spots that are convenient to get to are where players are going to drop. And if you have a spot that's typically populated but it's really inconvenient to get to, it's going to be unlikely that there's players there. And if you want to get a lot of kills consistently, you're going to have to vary up your drop depending on the bus. You can't just drop at the same location every time, unless that location is something like Dusty or Salty. That's why I go to Dusty a lot, because I'm horrible at dropping at Salty, and Dusty is a good spot that still has like a decent amount of people at it, typically just because it's the center of the map, pretty much. Loot Lake can be another location like this. There's always those spots that draw people regardless, but keeping in mind the bus route, and what you want to do from there, don't forget the bus route. You want to know what spots people were likely to go to. Even if you don't like that spot, you don't want to drop there and you don't want to rotate there. What you want to keep in mind is where people are likely to go from that location. Tilted is a good example of this because Tilted in Season 9 is pretty trash and not that many people seem to go there as much from my experience. And the people that go there often leave pretty quickly in the slipstream. So rotating to Tilted itself isn't always the best action, but rotating to where people are likely to rotate from Tilted is a good action. Going to somewhere like Loot Lake, that entire area pretty much in between Tilted and Salty, maybe even Shifty. These spots are going to be where those Tilted players rotate to, since there's typically spending less time in Tilted from my experience. Obviously, every game is different, and a lot of this is just estimates, not necessarily anything that is guaranteed. But you want to know what is likely to be hot and where those people are likely to go afterwards. That'll give you a much better perspective on where players actually are. And then there's some spots that are just hot randomly. Like I said, you can't always predict things. If you're having a hard time finding people, what you want to do is go to one of the mobility options like a skybase or a slipstream and fly up and look for people that way. or go to a supply drop. The reason why supply drops are a pretty good thing to rotate to is because people often rotate to them themselves. They're marked on the map and players know how valuable they are. They often have launch pads, which are going to be really good for pushing people or even just rotating in late game. If you make it there and you want to just end up winning or whatever, launch pads are very effective. Another thing that supply drops often have are rift-to-goes. So you can get that supply drop, maybe get a fight or two at the supply drop, and then pop the rift-to-go, and then find people around you using the rift-to-go, or use the launch pad to find people. Another thing you want to keep in mind is if you're looking at the map, if someone takes a supply drop, like there was a supply drop on the map and then there no longer is one, that means there's a player there. So if you had a supply drop nearby that you didn't intend on going for and then you see it get taken, you know that there's somebody there and you can get that kill. So that's what I like to do if I don't understand where players are. Like sometimes, like I play this game a lot, but there's still matches where I'm playing and it just literally nothing makes sense. Like I'll go Dusty, there's nobody. I'll go Salty, there's nobody. And then like Loot Lake, there's nobody. And it's just like, where the heck are players at? At that point, use the sky bases, use the slipstreams, get in the air. That is the easiest way to find people. And it's really easy to get in the air in Season 9 because of these slipstreams, because of the sky bases. There's just a lot of mobility items in the game, or options in the game, I should say. If you go to the zone, the edge of the zone, where the if there's a slipstream path that's on the edge of the zone, chances are there's going to be a fight going on there. Just things like this. The mobility really dictates movement of players, and movement of players is what dictates how you're going to find people. So you want to keep all these things in mind as you're playing the game if you want to actually encounter a lot of players. So that's it for this video. This was meant to be just a basic video on rotations. If you want to see something more specific on like early game or late game, leave a comment below. Let me know. Also, like I said, subscribe, turn on notifications if you want to see more. And I'll see you guys another time. Thanks for watching. Goodbye. They're both over there, I think. There we go. Well, luckily we killed the better player there with the RPG. That guy was the person that was the dog skin in that situation wasn't very good. The other player, I didn't really know what skin they were exactly, but I knew they weren't the dog and they were the better player. That's why I was focusing them more. But